Last summer, I went out into the wilderness with a buddy of mine, Mark. He had been out to the place a few times and decided it would be a great experience for me to get out there before I started to settle down with a job. It was generally what you would expect: fishing, hiking, driving around the mountains. But I saw something out there, something I can't explain. It was the last day of the fishing trip, so Mark and I decided to stay out a little later than usual. We knew we weren't going to catch anything, we never did, but it was more the pleasure of being out there with a friend than anything. Buck, Mark's dog, laid his head on the side of the boat to watch the sunset. Out on the lake, the sunsets were always a lot shorter than I expected. Before we had even reeled our lines in, the sky was already dark, and Mark flipped on the headlights of the boat. We were always out from shore, so we made up our minds to start back. About halfway there, I noticed something rustling in the treetops. Mark had told me these woods were full of owls, and having grown up in a lifeless urban sprawl, I was curious. In our week on the lake, I hadn't seen any animals in the forest, and I was intent on returning home with something to talk about. "Shine a light over there," I said as we approached the shoreline, and he obliged. The light flashed through the branches and produced nothing but a rapid rustling. "The lights might have scared him off," Mark told me. We tied the boat in place. The boat belonged to one of Mark's friends, who had fashioned a sort of makeshift dock for it, and walked into the trees. We were probably 100 yards from our car, but we had a well-defined trail ahead of us. Buck, stoic and trained, hadn't worn a leash in years, and led the way in the dark. A couple of dollar store flashlights led our path. Eventually, there was a stretch on the trail where the trees got thicker, and you had to duck to fit under some low-hanging branches. Buck moved through with no problem, while Mark and I had more trouble trying to dodge thorns and climb over limbs. At a certain point, we heard Buck start barking. I'd heard him bark maybe twice years ago when he was a puppy. This was sort of ungodly howling that followed him as he darted into the woods at full speed. "Buck!" Mark called after him, but it was too late. He shone his flashlight into the thicket. "We can't see anything like this. Let's go in there." We made our way through the bushes, feet getting tangled on roots. Buck's howling was still audible somewhere in the distance. "I just don't know what could have set him off like that," Mark told me. "Since I got him, I trained him as a guard dog. He never flies off the handle. Maybe he heard a car out on the road, or maybe he's chasing that owl. No, you know Buck, he doesn't do that. This isn't like..." Mark lost his footing and let out a yelp that pierced the silence of the forest, sliding down the side of a shallow hill. The fall didn't look too bad, but he had taken it at an awkward angle and hurt his knees. "You okay?" I asked him as he wobbled to his feet. He took a few strange steps before leaning on a tree for support. "I don't think I can keep moving through like this." He sweated at a woody vine. That's fine. The trail's not too far back. Just get to the car. I'll grab Buck. Call me if you need me." Mark gave a pained wave and I kept moving. Immediately, I felt uneasy. Mark knew this area much better than me, and I instantly recognized how useless I would be on my own. I did my best to follow the sound. After what felt like 10 minutes of aimless meandering, I finally found Buck. He was staring intently up that trunk of white oak tree, his barks growing raspier as he wore out his throat. I called him to me, but he acted as if I wasn't there. When I tugged at his collar, he snarled at me and started pulling on my jeans. He returned to staring up at the tree. I raised my flashlight and looked through the leaves. My heart sank. From between a mess of branches, a pasty, impossibly thin face stared back at me. I could describe it in great detail if there was any detail to describe, but the face simply appeared to be stretched skin with two small beady eyes. A wide mouth completed the picture, lacking teeth and lips. I fell backward and started to run. Buck was no longer intent on hunting the creature and sprinted ahead of me. I could hear it leaving a wake of rustling leaves. I could feel its presence bearing down on me, and all at once, my nostrils were filled with a thick scent that reminded me of mildew. Every other step, my arms were getting shredded by thorns. Several times I knocked my head on low branches, but my strides had to continue, unaffected. As I neared the trail, I heard a yell from behind me. It was Mark. I feared I must have left in worse shape than I thought. Would have busted me. He couldn't outrun whatever monstrosity I was trying to escape. I turned back and ran towards the yells. The dim beam from my flashlight waved in every direction, and I feared that the creature would know exactly where I was. As if my situation couldn't get any worse, my phone began to ring. Not a quiet vibrating or a low melody, a high screeching ringtone that they could probably hear in Canada. I saw it was Mark and answered while I ran. "Mark, where are you? I can't find you. I've been here in the car for half an hour. Where the hell are you?" And then it struck me. That thing had stolen Mark's scream. I raised my flashlight straight ahead. There it was, looking. The forest was silent for a moment. The creature opened its mouth and yelled Mark's yell. I ran faster than my legs would carry me, stumbling and scrambling my way through the natural death trap of roots and bushes. A lack of common sense urged me to look back. The creature followed me on all fours, unbalanced but impossibly fast. My body turned autopilot. I could barely remember the details of the chase. I remember being disoriented and dehydrated as I finally reached the road. The truck was ready to go, and as I emerged from the tree line, Mark looked confused. "Where have you been?" he said, rolling down the window. "Drive!" Buck had made his way into the truck bed and was whimpering with his paws over his face. The creature did not follow me out into the road, but as we sped away, I could see a pale figure moving through the brush. I don't know what it was. I asked Mark, and he said he hadn't seen anything like that in any of the times he had gone up to the lake. I'm still not sure if he completely believes me. All I can hope for is that someone reading this does, and help me understand what this thing is. Against my better judgment, I feel the temptation to come back, to return with a camera or a gun, anything that might help me get closer and prove my story. I'll keep you updated.